Israelis mourn the loss of their most revered and controversial statesman. Former President and Prime Minister Shimon Peres died this week at age 93. He suffered a massive stroke 2 weeks ago. Here's a look at the man whose life spanned the entire history of modern Israel. Born in Poland in 1923, Shimon Peres immigrated to Israel at 11 years old. And when Israel was reborn as a nation in 1948, Peres was there. And both critics and admirers will agree that for the next 7 decades, he played a major role in the country's leadership.
Shimon Peres has one of the most unique stories in Israel's history. He's been on the political scene for 70 years. He has a political life that's longer than Moses.
Peres is best known as the secret architect of the Oslo Accords in the early 1990s. It began the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians, and he won a Nobel Peace Prize with Yasser Arafat for his efforts. Historian and author Michael Widlansky said Peres will be remembered for the good and the bad.
His place in history is 2 huge successes and 2 or 3 huge mistakes. His huge success was that together with Ben-Gurion, he set up Israel's nuclear reactor and its nuclear program. His further success was in 1976. He, not Yitzhak Rabin, was the person who initiated the Entebbe raid in Uganda.
He began his career as an aide to Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion. He was a socialist who worked his way up the ranks of the left-wing Labor Party, which ran Israel for decades. Over the years, Peres would serve as defense minister, foreign minister, and prime minister 3 times, and finally as president, the highest ceremonial office.
His 2 huge failures. First of all, he was opposed to the Iraqi reactor raid by Menachem Begin in 1981. And his biggest failure is the Oslo Accords. The deal with the PLO, which he naively believed would bring peace to Israel, brought more harm, more terror than anything ever before.
CBN founder Pat Robertson interviewed Peres in his office in 1984. It seems some things haven't changed.
The U.S. and Israel have reached a new strategic understanding. How would you enlarge on those initiatives?
You know, everybody talks about American aid to Israel, but if you will compare what is the cost of the American presence in Europe or Japan or Korea, it's incomparable to what we are being given help. And on the other hand, to go together and try to bring peace to the area.
Widlansky and others describe Peres as a man of tremendous optimism and drive.
He did some great things for the state of Israel for which he should always be remembered positively. He tried hard, and he did it usually for the good of the state.
One way or the other, all would admit that with Peres passing, it's the end of an era in Israel. Presidents, kings, princes, and senior officials from 75 nations came to honor Shimon Peres. The pioneer of modern Israel was laid to rest in Jerusalem.
Shimon lived a life of purpose. He soared to incredible heights. He swept so many with his vision and his hope. He was a great man of Israel. He was a great man of the world. We find hope in his legacy, as does the world.
He imagined all the things the rest of us could do. He started off life as Israel's brightest student, became its best teacher, and ended up its biggest dreamer.
I could
not be more honored to be in Jerusalem to say farewell to my friend Shimon Peres, who showed us that justice and hope are at the heart of the Zionist idea. A free life in a homeland regained.
Shimon Peres is a towering figure in the history of modern Israel. CBN correspondent Julie Stahl is joined in our Jerusalem studio by senior editor John Wagi to give us more insight on the life and legacy of this great leader.
John Wagi, welcome back to Jerusalem.
Thank you, Julie. Great to be back.
You have landed here at an eventful time. What can you tell us about the legacy of Shimon Peres?
Well, it's really unique in the history of Israel because Peres spanned the entire lifespan of the Israeli nation, modern Israel anyway, and he was a secular Jew who took part in the greatest miracle of the last 2,000 years, the rebirth in one day, as the prophets foretold, of the state of Israel. So here's a secular socialist who used to woo his wife by quoting from Karl Marx's book Das Kapital, who becomes an entrepreneur and a startup guy for the whole nation, not only the government, but science, technology, Israel's aircraft industry, all sorts of things that Shimon Peres had a hand in. And of course, we know him as the architect of the Oslo Accords, which many people now, including voters in Israel, believe really wasn't a success. So it was a man who, in a quest for peace, decided on the land for peace theory, or the land for promises of peace, that led to Oslo, and Oslo has not really been a success. So it's a bundle of contradictions that still are with the Israeli nation even now at the time of his death.
Shimon Peres has been hailed as a man of peace. We only had one Arab leader show up for his funeral, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. None of the other Arab leaders showed up. Do you think his legacy is going to continue in the Middle East?
Well, I think his legacy of being an optimist and being a dreamer will continue because he legitimately represents the Israeli people, I think, in that regard. But as far as the peace process goes, I think it's in a world of hurt right now. Every time Israel has traded land for promises of peace, they've gotten rockets, and there's no sign on the horizon that anything different is going to come about. And the other question is, who will take the place of Shimon Peres on the left and in the peace camp? There's nobody that has the gravitas that he had in being part of the building of the Israeli state. And so they really have a challenge to make their message come across in this very dangerous world where the Middle East is blowing up in different places.